Hello, my friends, and thank you so much for your support throughout the year. This is the final episode of the year, and my guest is Wajahat Ali, and we get real personal in today's episode. The first half of our conversation is about current events, politics, and everything that's been going on these past couple of weeks. But then, at about 29 minutes, I ask Waj about his New Year's resolutions and what he wants to change and do better, and he really opens up to me in a way I'm not sure he ever has, and I was so there for it. I'm so here for it. Isn't that what they say? I think it's amazing. I think what he says is going to resonate with so many people listening. I think it's going to give you permission to feel the way you want to feel, the way you're feeling, to not feel alone in those feelings. Waj really gets honest and open and raw, and it's wonderful. So I'm not sure if you prefer the politics and the current events. I mean, we have a talk that I feel like we've had the talk today that we've had many times before with some new updates, but the last 29 minutes to me is really great, and I loved it, and I think you will too. So last episode of the year. I'll probably take New Year's Day off and be back with a new episode on Tuesday, but we will see who I can get my hands on. I am so grateful to you for your support. I had a great time hanging out with folks on Thursday night, and I am really excited about what's to come in 2024. So, with all of that said, the intro is done. It's time to get to Waj. He's a Daily Beast columnist, a playwright, a speaker, a commentator, and, of course, the author of Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on how to become American. And listen to his podcast that he co-hosts with DAnielle. Moodie drops every Thursday. Democracy-ish. It's always a great day. Do you like musicals?
I was thinking about that recently because I watched the movie Maestro on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, do I like musicals? And I'm not against them, but I think human beings love musicals and need musicals. Like, if you look in South Asia, a country of like 1 billion people, like India, like people love Bollywood, man. It's amazing escapism.
I just thought Bollywood was the Indian entertainment industry. It's in fact a genre of musical comedy.
It is the name affectionately given to the Indian cinema, which is, I think, now the largest producer of movies. But the movies that really take hold, right? Globally, it's amazing. I've traveled around the world, and like all these different people like know the song. They can't even speak the language, but they know the actors and the songs. Southeast Asia and Asia. It's just like 3-hour melodramatic, oftentimes love stories where it's like randomly they just break out into song and dance.
I ask because my daughters went to see the Wonka movie. The white kids went to see the Willy Wonka musical, and the black kids went to see the Color of Purple musical this weekend, I found out.
And both crushed at the box office.
Is that right? I'm not sure how they did, but my younger daughter doesn't really like musicals. She's like, I had no idea it was a musical. And for the reason you said, I don't like them either. And a lot of listeners at our Hangout the other night were very offended by me. So I don't mean to offend anybody. I think they're amazing for all kinds of reasons, the talented performers, the writing, the music, all of it. But as you just said, people just breaking out in a song, dance. I don't love it.
You're like, I don't like this mirth. What are you doing with your body? These hip gyrations stirs things in my loins that trouble me and confuse me.
I love the mirth. It feels weird that people just start singing. I mean, you and I could make a musical right now out of anything at all, anything totally mundane. We just start singing about it.
Do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do. What caused the Civil War?
I'm not sure what it was. That's not a very easy question.
Stop trying to trick me, Democrat.
Exactly.
It just makes everything more fun.
The musical of the 2024 Republican primary race, which I guess that's going to end in just like one loud thud, a big drum with Trump taking it as everybody predicts it. But it's possible. Maybe somebody else is going to run away with it, Waj.
It's like a big trombone. It's me. I'm the last one surviving. You're fired. It's like the worst musical on earth. Everyone leaves depressed. Yeah, I'm kind of like you. It's one of those situations where I really try to get into musicals because like maybe there's something, because I was watching this movie Maestro on Netflix, which is directed by Bradley Cooper. And I'm like, maybe there's something about me. Like, how come I'm not that into musicals, right? Like every time they start busting out into song and dance, I'm like, let's move forward in the narrative progression.
Yes.
Right. But Yeah, but maybe we're just misanthropic individuals, Pete.
It's possible, and I feel badly about that. I don't mean to.
But look. As I said, you and me making a musical about the the otherwise very depressing state of our political affairs, where Nikki Haley, a South Asian woman, a daughter of immigrants, who was able to come to America thanks to the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, passed on the backs of the Civil Rights Movement, when asked by a potential voter what caused the Civil War, she could not say slavery. And it took her about 12 hours for her campaign then to come out with a statement. And this is, again, is a brown woman who also allegedly took down the Confederate flag, but then now kind of walks it back. So but once we started making a musical about it, I think we were able to enjoy the absurdity of the moment.
Yes, well,
right? Maybe it's the medicine that makes things go down easier.
It's plenty of other lines, and I'm just not good enough to come up with any at this point. But I got to ask you about that whole situation. I want you to respond to conservative columnist Jon Podhoretz, who said,
Podhoretz? Yes.
Does anyone truly believe that the child of Indian immigrants to the United States who took down the Confederate flag flying over to the state capitol is a pro-slavery racist? I say this knowing it was a dreadful answer, and that dreadful answers sometimes tank campaigns. But to you, Waj, is it possible that a brown-skinned Indian woman who took down the Confederate flag is a pro-slavery racist? What do you say to him?
I say Vivek Ramaswamy and Dinesh D'Souza. I say people of color, especially immigrants of color, especially Indians and South Asians, unfortunately are increasingly being used by white supremacy to promote this model minority myth that if we can do it, why can't the blacks do it, right? We oftentimes have been used as the enforcers of white supremacy, right? To bash poor immigrants and black people and say, stop whining and complaining. There's no racism. Look, I worked hard and I made it, but let me not tell you about the Immigration Nationality Act and the fact that, my dad came here because he was educated and I had like a step up. But let me not talk about that. And oftentimes it's people of color, black people, Clarence Thomas, Larry Elders. I mean, we could go down the list, who are used to what I call their cultural validators. They're the tokens, the spokesmen. I call Nikki Haley, what did I call her? I said she's the perfect Manchurian candidate. The alpha Karen with brown skin who's able to launder white supremacist talking points, right?
Yes.
Which she does. And she kicked off her campaign bashing immigrants. And she told Raphael Warnock to go back to his country, right? So it's one of those dog whistles that once it comes from the mouth of a black or brown person gives especially their white funders and the Republican Party cover. See, I didn't say it. Nikki said it, and she's brown.
Yes. Brown
racist.
Brown and black folks can uphold white supremacy. Women can uphold patriarchy. And as you said, she's being used here is a pretty, sound argument that I am buying for a long time. But the other thing I want to ask you about specifically, Nikki Haley being a first generation Indian American, somebody at the Hangout the other night, I think it was a brown person, but I'm not sure. But I'm going to let you to weigh in on this. People in India understand racism, may understand it better than anybody. They have a whole goddamn caste system. It's not as if they're not racist. Now, you're Pakistani, so it's a lot closer to Indian than I am, but I'm a white person, so I understand racism just fine. But what is your response to, Indian people can't be racist? What?
Yeah, I give you the caste system. I give you colorism. I give you white supremacy. I give you the herpes of colonialism that has infected generation after generation, where light skin tone and white skin tone is valued and black skin tone and dark skin tone is seen as inferior. And the person who made that comment, Jon Podhoretz of commentary, I don't know if you've been following commentators, Podhoretz and Eli Lake and others, they have gone full genocidal, like openly genocidal against Palestinians and Arabs, like openly. So maybe John should take a lesson from his own racism and realize that minorities can be racist, Pete. Doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Desi, South Asian, black. Yes, this is endemic. And minorities, the people of color in particular, can actually be the guardians and upholders and enforcers of white supremacy. And if you're white, you can actually be against white supremacy. And I think that's what people are realizing with the emergence of the Nikki Haleys and the Vivek Ramaswamis.
What are the kind of things Eli Lake and Podritz are saying that, causes you to say that?
Just follow their tweets. This open celebration of the bombardment of Gaza. Destroy it all, bomb it all, crush it all. Who cares that they're bombing on during Christmas? They're Muslims anyway. That's what John said, and I did a response to him which went quasi viral.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
Same sentiment for the Christians.
Somebody said they're bombing them on Christmas, and he's like, they're Muslims. They don't celebrate Christmas, right?
Yeah, there you go. So and the fact that they say it so openly, and you sit there and you think, if anyone was to say this about any other group, would they have careers? Would they be invited into polite society? Would they be invited on CNN and MSNBC like these folks are? But just the casual genocidal racism against Palestinians, Muslims, and Arabs is just remarkable. And the fact that, of course, he came out and had to defend Nikki Haley, and they defend Vivek Ramaswamy with this type of asinine, ridiculous comment. Well, how can she be racist? And the last thing I'll say, and I think this is important, I'm not God. I'm not Ben Carson. I don't know what's in people's minds and hearts, right? I judge people by their actions and behaviors. And when, what was that guy, the other one who enabled the Trump, but now is trying to run as a martyr, Chris Christie. I know Nikki Haley, she doesn't have a racist bone in her body. I asked my wife, who's a doctor, are there racist bones? She goes, no, they're just bones. I judge people by their actions, right, and their behavior. And repeatedly and consistently, it seems that if you repeat racist talking points, if you promote racist conspiracies, if you behave like a racist, Pete, you might actually be racist.
I feel like it's so nebulous, the term, the word now, and everybody uses the word racist. I try to stick to systemic racism. So if you're a commentator or you're a politician that does not want to restore voting rights, you're racist. Because you could be friends with and marry a black person, and you can love individual black people that you know, if we're talking about black folks. But if you don't support all of the black people's rights to vote, then forget about education, economic, or healthcare opportunities. To me, that's the line I try to draw with all these politicians. Where are you in the Voting Rights Act, which Dr. King fought and died for? And where are you in restoring what the Supreme Court has done to it through congressional action? Where are you on that? That's how I decide whether or not you're racist. That's my threshold.
Do you support and promote racist policies? You love women. You're married to a woman. You love your mom. You have a daughter. Does that mean you can't be a misogynist? Of course not. You could be a misogynist and think women belong in the kitchen, and you're advocating for them to lose their bodily autonomy, right? You could say, I love Jews. Just some of my favorite friends are Jews, but you're promoting the racist and anti-Semitic and white supremacist replacement theory that has radicalized terrorists, right? You're openly funding off that. So are you an anti-Semite or not? I don't know. But what I do know is you're promoting anti-Semitic policies. You're promoting anti-black policies. You're promoting anti-woman policies. So what does that make you, Pete?
It, I think, makes you someone who likes the Jews you know and work with and who have provided you and your family opportunities. But or an anti-Semite. But I think that's the other thing that's really flabbergasting is to see the Republicans waving the Israeli flag as the political party in America that is supportive of the Jewish people. Meanwhile, they have been, well, you could take it from there. I mean, it's just really, really.
Well, I mean, just one example, right? Like the fact that, I've complained about this on your show before, but the fact that the majority of Americans in our institutions and our corporations keep falling for the bad faith actions of bad faith actors, right? Which is the Republican Party and conservative movement, who whined about cancel culture, but like you said, are literally canceling voting rights and books and elections, right? And Elise Stefanik comes up there and in this 5-hour interview with these university presidents, right, asks a bad faith question about the Intifada and about genocide. And meanwhile, we're still running friggin' think pieces about it. Meanwhile, Elise Stefanik is the one who ran campaign ads on the replacement theory. And as of last week, when asked to, denounce President Trump, former President Trump, who literally used Hitler's language, poisoning the blood, right? That's what immigrants do. She refuses to denounce it. And we sit there and we're like, maybe this bad faith actor who asked this bad faith question should be challenged and not taken seriously and should be questioned if she indeed cares so much about Jews, how come she promotes anti-Semitic rhetoric that has been used to kill Jews?
I wish we could, all good points, just separate Israel and American Jews or the diaspora even, because, I mean, you can't. It's very hard to, and people might even push back at me saying that. But like in America, we have our own domestic issues and problems, and we have our own policies that people support for all kinds of different reasons. But historically, American Jews have supported the Democratic Party since the Civil Rights Movement, for sure, obviously, World War II and so on. And they still do overwhelmingly. And they're more progressive-minded people in many ways and so on. But we get stuck on the Israel thing. But if the Republican Party in America has been targeting American Jews and minimizing and marginalizing them and rhetorically, using them for, I mean, both sides do, but the Republican Party for sure, especially under Trump. I mean, they're so anti-Semitic. Nick Fuentes and all the rest that support Trump. Come on, how do you not put those dots together?
Well, it's one of those situations where I always say they love Israel. Jews, not so much. And I think a connection that we need to make for the listeners, which oftentimes, it's common to us, but not to other people. So, you bring it up, and I think it needs to be explored more. Why? Why is the Republican Party, like you said, which promotes these anti-Semitic conspiracies, the dual loyalty tropes, quoting Hitler, where Trump dined with Nick Fuentes, the leader of the white nationalist movement, super anti-Semitic, openly anti-Semitic, right? Why do they care so much about Israel? It's a good question. And the reason is because a major base of Trump and the Republican Party are white Christian evangelicals. And white Christian evangelicals, some of them, believe that the Jews need to control Israel, specifically Jerusalem, as a necessary prerequisite for, wait for it, the return of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so Jews are but a pawn or a tool. And by the way, that's why Pastor Hagee, who leads the largest Zionist movement in America, folks, it's not run by Jews. It's run by evangelical Christian Pastor Hagee, Christians Unite for Israel. That's why he's all up in the mix, even though he's the one who has a history of, anti-LGBTQ, anti-Semitic, and anti-woman statements that were so outlandish. People forget that in 2008, John McCain removed himself in the March for Israel. Remember that march that happened, I think, last month?
Yeah.
You had Van Jones, who got booed for calling for a ceasefire. You had Hakeem Jeffries. You had the number 3, the leader of the House, a Christian evangelical, Christian nationalist who does not believe in the separation of church and state, Mike, what's his name? Mike Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah. And who'd you have? Hagee, the same guy who said, Hitler was necessary because it eventually led to the creation of Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. All speaking at that rally, people who, as you said, they love Israel. The Jews, not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah. Maybe as an accountant or, certain. Yeah. That's how Trump likes him. Man. All right. So.
But he doesn't need their money. He said that. I don't need your money.
That's right.
And remember he did the dual loyalty thing? He goes, American Jews, you should be grateful. I helped your country, Israel. And they're like, I'm American. What?
Yeah. Real bad stuff and real overt from him. He has been much more authoritarian sounding and Nazi sounding, as you commented on. And these trials also seem to be making him more of a martyr and more popular amongst his people, at least with polling. We shouldn't be really thinking about polling a year away. It's 0% accurate, apparently, is it stats this far away. But what do you make of the fact that he just continues to gain strength, like Superman recovering from kryptonite and the sun shining, but that sun being Nazi rhetoric and more evidence that he's a traitor coming out in each one of these trials. He gets or maintains or gets more popular.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what you and I have said specifically is that the cruelty and the racism and the misogyny is what the base covets. And the more he reveals this side of himself, it allows the base to take off their masks. It gives them permission. And, some polls are worth mentioning after he cited Hitler poisoning. I mean, this is where we're at, Pete. 2023, about to turn 2024. And the guy who's going to run for president for the Republican Party literally cited the language of Hitler. And once Iowa Republican voters were asked about it, a majority of them said, no, we like him. That's fine. A majority. So what does it say about a majority of Republican voters? I'm not talking about conservatives, but a majority of Republican voters, the fact that they love Trump when he's more vicious, cruel, hateful, angry, racist. What does it say about them?
Yeah, the appeal of authoritarianism is so much more attractive than anything remotely what we used to recognize as the outcome of elections or democracy, it would seem. Don't you think like Stephen Miller or Steve Bannon probably likely wrote those Hitler-esque lines and he didn't even know it and he just said them and then...
No, because it was reported that he had a copy of Mein Kampf in his room and he used to study it, right? And
I
read
think it was a copy of Hitler's speeches and somebody accidentally thought it was Mein Kampf. The whole fact check on that is a little convoluted, but apparently Ivanka Trump said he used to keep a copy of a book of his speeches. She said that, and then somebody else cited it in another. I just read the fact check on it, but yeah, fair enough. But I just
I appreciate that fact check because yes, it is one of those things where, and then he says, I didn't know. Then he took credit for it. I didn't know Hitler said it. I said it. Yeah, it doesn't make it better, right? Like, I accidentally quoted
I said
Hitler.
It before Hitler. It's like when he recognized like Frederick Douglass as still being alive and other things, like nobody's ever thought of this, but now he's doing it to Hitler.
Yeah, he's like, no, it was me, not Hitler, and we share the same talking points. Wait, I meant, and then you have now the slavery gaffe, if you will, by Nikki Haley, where she, was just incapable of saying slavery, and the reason is because she realized it would piss off her base that still waves the Confederate flag, the flag of racist traitors. And so, we're in this situation where I don't care. It goes back to what we said. I don't care if it was Stephen Miller who wrote it or if it was Steve Bannon. He said it.
Right. Well,
and he doubled down on it. And, why did he say it and double down on it? Because I don't know what's in people's hearts. I don't know what's in their minds. I don't know if they have racist bodies. I judge them by their repeated actions and behaviors. And this man's repeated actions and behaviors are that of a racist. And the fact that so many of our fellow Americans love him reveals something ugly about this country. It's that a lot of our neighbors, they could go to church. They could be good dads. They could play catch with their son. They could love their wife. They could be your coworker. They're not evil. They don't have horns on their head. But they're fine with the fascist authoritarian. And that's something ugly about America that we refuse to acknowledge, that America has always been this way.
But I think it matters as to why. And I, think about this a lot, and it's just so true. They have been told for years and years and years the wrong causes for their problems, and they believe them. I mean, if I believed that migrants were replacing veterans and getting more benefits than veterans, and I'd be pissed too. I'd be angry at Democrats for doing so many of these things. But the truth is, and so many people have written about this, from Dying of Whiteness, what's his name? Jonathan Metzl. And I mean, Tom Hartman has been talking about this on the radio as long as I can remember. Yeah. Voting against your own interests and voting for all these free trade capitalist policies that ship your fucking job out of the country. They've always, and I feel like, did you see that Liz Cheney Colbert conversation that went kind of viral, where he basically asked her to answer for the Republican Party's journey and how we got here, and can't she take responsibility? Aren't they the more basically racist of the parties? And she was like, the left is now anti-Semitic, and Colbert just rolled his eyes. But the point being, this has always been the case, Waj.
Yeah, this is who they are. This is the Southern strategy.
Yeah.
Appeal to white grievance and white rage and divide and conquer, white versus black. And especially workers, right? They have a lot more in common. But if you use the dog whistles, then you can win over white workers when it comes to racial grievance, because anytime people of color or women or minorities gain equal rights, you make it seem as a zero-sum game. It came at their expense, right? So if immigrants come and they get jobs, you took away a white person's job. If immigrants succeed, they succeeded and you lost, right? And when they did the research, when it came to Trump voters in 2016, like we said, but no one pays attention to me because I'm right. It wasn't economic anxiety. It was cultural anxiety. And specifically, the narrative is they're taking away my American dream. They are taking away my freedoms. They are taking away my jobs. And Trump said, you know who they are? Them immigrants, them Mexicans, them Muslims, right? Them liberals. And it's one of the situations where that's why we need to learn history. But that's why they're banning history and banning books. So we realize that the people who are screwing you over aren't the immigrants who are doing the jobs no one else wants to do and helping literally replace the population, because without them, it's going to be friggin' ghost towns. It's the corporations. It's the white guy with the top hat. It's Trump and his buddies who are openly screwing you, and you're letting them.
The white guy with the top hat is such a perfect.
With the monocle, too.
Well, let me ask you this. You're a lawyer and you have thoughts about things with politics and legal issues. Okay, so what's the scenario? This attempt to remove Trump from the ballot, this is legally, it's pretty sound. It's a conservative legal argument. Section 14, Amendment, 14th Amendment, Section 3 pretty much says if you're a traitor, you can't run for, you're disqualified from running for office. It's pretty clear there. We know where it came from and so on. And so you got the Colorado Supreme Court, you got the Michigan Supreme Court. Now the Maine Supreme Court all deciding on this. People know the score, but Waj, can I have it both ways? Can he be removed? And also it being really bad politics for Democrats. Where do you come down? Is there a little of both? Do you see both these arguments? There's a political argument and there's a legal argument.
So echoing conservative states' rights. You know, leave it up to the states. This is the state constitution and state law. And so Maine is simply following the letter of the law, and so is Colorado. Michigan, however, didn't. So leave it up to the states. The states are enforcing the law, and they're following the 14th Amendment, which was literally put in place for moments like this to make sure that people who incited an insurrection or traitorous behavior against the United States would not be able to run. I give you January 6th. And so if I'm doing it legally, you know, it's very hard to argue against it. Politically, what I would say is no matter what you do, like, let me put it this way. What we've heard from so many of our colleagues is you're going to piss them off. They're going to be riled up. Oh, they're going to be angry, speaking about MAGA. And I would like to quote the Avengers, and specifically Bruce Banner, when he looks to Tony Stark and says, I'm always angry. They're always pissed off. It's like, that famous quote from the movie, The Wild One, starring Marlon Brando. What are you rebelling against? What do you got? It's like for MAGA, it's like, what are you angry about today? And they're like, what do you got? And Fox News, like, the trans. Yeah, I'm angry about the trans. The blacks dancing in the White House, doing Nutcracker. I'm angry about the blacks doing the Nutcracker. The hijab. Yeah, Ilhan Omar is like, you know, they're always angry. Yeah. And they're angry because it's a minority right-wing authoritarian group that wants power by any means necessary, that wants to take this country back to 1952, leave it to Beaver, black and white, where white's on top. Let them be angry, Pete. Let them be effing angry. Who gives a shit? I'm done with it. And so let them be angry and let these states flex their states' rights. And especially against Donald Trump, who committed an insurrection. Weaken him as much as you can, man. And the last thing I'll say is look at the Supreme Court. Are you kidding me? Look at the stacked Supreme Court where Leonard Leo and Federalists used 4 decades and right-wing money to install right-wing corrupt puppets who literally lied to the American public and took away, Roe v. Wade. Who cares? They don't care. Why should we? We're the majority. That's where I'm at now.
Certainly are. All right. Finally, the new year is upon us, and I saw you tweeting something. Somebody's sharing some behavioral psychologist or something about New Year's resolutions. I know you pretty well. I know you're always trying to become a better person in every way, better husband, father, friend, better, more creative writer, commentator. Of course, you're always thinking about diet, nutrition, exercise. You're a whatever-year-old man. Are you making any changes, and how do you feel about the new year and resolutions in general?
Yeah, I am. I'm 43. I was thinking a lot about it. And earlier today, and we've talked about this on your show, so I'll bring it up. Earlier today, I had my 1 hour with my, I guess you could call it therapist, something I did recently in the summer for the first time in my life, specifically for my OCD and anxiety, and I've kept up with it. And then, every 2 weeks we do a check-in. And, I've realized now it's mostly just to talk to someone. And I was telling her, she asked me this question and came, since it's fresh in my mind, I was talking about updating my value system and asking myself what matters to me, what matters to me most, what gives me joy, because, it's one of those things where I thought I had a handle on it. And I was wondering, why I was so frustrated with myself. Because, I don't know if I've shared this with you. Probably I have. I asked my wife, and I think I used to ask my wife this every day, and I've gotten a little bit better. So now it's like maybe twice a week. I always ask her, have I wasted my life? Have I done enough? Do I have enough time? Do I have enough time? And she's like, I don't understand. You've done so much compared to most people, right? They look at you and they're like, I can't believe Waj is asking this. If he's asking this, I feel like a failure. And so I was wondering, like, where is this coming from, right? So obviously there was something out of whack where I'm chasing stuff and what I'm chasing isn't giving me fulfillment. And so where can I reprioritize where I'm still ambitious and I still motivate myself, but I'm not necessarily chasing things that let me feel like, this feeling of disappointment, where I want fulfillment instead. And so with that, I've kind of come up with this paradigm where, like, all right, let me instead work on mental health, creative, physical. And so it's small things that I can do every day, right? So push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, running. That's the physical, meditating, spending time with my kids, working on a book. But instead of thinking about, it has to be a bestseller, and finally this book is going to take me to the, where I should have gone in my career, I'm like, let me just write the book and leave the rest, pivot in my career instead of finally, chasing the New York Times and the CNN and MSNBC. Maybe go back to my roots, man, where I started off broke, with my Ethernet cable on my broken Fujitsu laptop in Fremont, California, and just put stuff out there, put content out for the sake of content, right? Like stuff that I'm interested about. And so I feel like it's one of those moments I needed at this age where you and I have talked about as middle-aged men, where, you realize there's less years ahead of you than behind you. And how do you want to live those years? You asked me a simple question. I gave you a lot, but it's been on my mind.
Oh, man, I feel very fortunate that you did give me everything you said. It really resonates, as I'm sure you can imagine, with me. But I guess I just have one follow-up question about it, which is, you're talking about, have I done enough, and purpose and updating your value system. And then I wondered where you would go with it. And it seems like where you went was a lot of your work, your career related stuff. And I wonder how much you think about the value system and the purpose just being the best dad, husband, friend, son type you could be, but especially dad, that role. And where does that come in terms of how you feel your purpose? Because I think a lot of times being a parent, you don't get any accolades. You don't get any great feedback. A lot of times you get disrespected even, or taken for granted, one might say. And then a lot of times it's just the same stuff over and over. And I think sometimes that's where a lot of women that don't have careers get stuck with purpose. But I think men do. And I think men, now I'm having to, my daughters are older, so I have to renew what my role as a parent is. It's so much less than, or it's different. So my question is, in terms of like your value system and what's important and what feeds your own sense of purpose and your own ego, where does that role come in? Because you're very dedicated and great father. And obviously your family's been through a tremendous amount with your daughter's illness. So what about that role and how much value you put on that?
So I truncated my answer and didn't give you the complete one for sake of time. But since you asked, when I was discussing this with, I guess you could call my therapist, that was the big bucket. So what it was, yeah, there was some aspect of work. There was another aspect about mental health and physical health and spiritual health.
Yeah.
The other big bucket was family and being more committed and present and engaging with my children who are now growing up. And, my son's now into sports. I'm taking him to his first football game this Sunday because he asked me to. My daughter's into like dancing and gymnastics, so spending more time with her. My baby daughter just like spending time with me. So it's one of those situations where I had this realization over the break, as in like I'm talking about a couple of days ago, where I was in Florida and my father-in-law, he mentioned he's 80. And I was like, man, he looks really good for 80. Because he was in the army back in the day, Pakistani Muslim man in the army. And he said something.
In the American army?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he came here and then he joined up the army and he's a doctor, right? And I remember he said something, he followed up with, I'm 80. So on average, I've got maybe 2 years left. And I sat there and I thought about it. I'm like, I did the math, my father, health problems in the 70s, my mom in the 70s. And I remember my wife said something to me recently. She said, we'll look back on these days and we'll say that these were the best years. And we'll look back on these days and say we weren't actually old, we were young, because our kids are with us, they're young, they enjoy spending time with us, and our parents are still alive. This is like the golden years, and that window's very small and narrow. So I thought about that, and a huge chunk, maybe the number one chunk, as far as purpose and values goes, is maybe my purpose is not the career stuff, which I always thought it was. Maybe it's about being the best dad and helping this young generation as much as I can. That'll be my best legacy, and helping my wife, who's much more talented than me. And then number two is whatever talents I have, being useful with them or being productive. And then in order to do number one and number two, I have to be of sound, healthy mind, body, and spirit.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's where, keeping myself curious and fresh and learning Spanish for the sake of learning Spanish and playing guitar for the sake of playing guitar and working out on my body, it amplifies the two core, purposes, which first is family, mainly being the dad, the best dad I can be. And then secondly, being what I call a cultural worker. This is where I'm at 43. I read and I write and I speak, and some people want to hear this stuff, and there's a lot happening in this world. So how can I be most useful?
Well, I think that's all super inspiring. I think that's really helpful for people to hear that that's where you're at and that's what you're looking at. And I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about it. I want to just continue this conversation, but I love what you said and I love what you're doing. And I think you've got it really prioritized really well. I think you can do all of those things if anybody can, I think you can.
Well, the last thing I'll say, I mentioned this and I know we talk about this. The one thing I need to work on, and I said this to my, we were just having a conversation. And I said, she said, how did it make you feel thinking about like these are the golden years and the window is getting more and more narrow? And I said, I thought about it. I'm an only child and I'm like, man, when my elders are gone, I'll be very sad. But I thought about it and I imagined it and I'm like, but I'm the type of guy, I would never like cry about it. I just keep it in. And she said, why? And she says, because I'm part of that old school generation of men. And I think it's also my innate disposition where we just keep things in. Even though it's so deeply unhealthy. And I joked to her, which I joke about on your show oftentimes, that if most people did a spiritual autopsy on men who've died in their 70s, they're like, he was healthy. He started becoming a vegan. He did the pilates, the Pilates. What happened? And then they were like, and then if they did a spiritual autopsy, they were like, oh, loneliness, sadness, depression, lack of emotion, lack of emotional connection, no friendship. And so that's something where I feel that's part of me, that I have that Spartan personality. Even though people say, oh, he's very generous, I keep things inside. And that's going to be a challenge in this new year. In order to be the person that I wanted to be for my family, a better community member, a better friend, I have to get in touch with that. And that is very scary, man.
I'm going to pull that. I'm going to pull that out of you in some weird ways this year. This is my goal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you, over the last 3 years, I don't know who said to do this. It was a bizarre idea. Oh, partly because a guy was following me around thinking about doing a documentary on a guy who just lost his dream job and is trying to rebuild. And dude's like, do you have any video of you crying? I was like, why the fuck would I have video of me crying? Like I mentioned that I was crying, that I cry a lot. And I was like, so I taped myself crying one time.
Damn.
And then I hid it in like my iPhoto album because like who wants to put that out? because it just seems a little bit. But I cry a good bit.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
You're much more, emotion comes from what the Greek word to move out. And so what happens if you do the opposite of that as men? Can be healthy.
Do you? I'll let you go. But I mean, I think I'm a very emotional person. What I mean by that is I think I feel all of the emotions, the good ones and the bad ones. I think anybody who knows me well has seen me real happy and fun and enjoyable, real angry and screaming and mad and sad and all of the rest of the hundreds of feelings. But do you not showcase most of them, or do you just keep? It seems like you do.
I absorb and feel most. But I have a better barometer of modulating it. So when it comes to anger, or I don't shout or rage. It's simmering. And then when it comes to, it's like my mom says this. She goes, you're very personable. You're very generous. People feel very comfortable around you. There was always people around you. You fed people. People share stuff with you, but you are a closed book, and you rarely let people in.
Oh.
And so it's very, I pull it off. Where that is one of those things I need to work on, where there are people who've known me for years. And a friend of mine gave me this compliment diss. The compliment diss was this. It's like knowing you is like climbing a giant mountain, and you climb. And after a while, you're like, I'm never going to get to the top. And I think it's not because of the depths of rather the heights of my brilliance. Not that. I think it was a person who really wanted to get to know me and get close to me. People, and this has been a lament of friends of mine. And I'll listen to them, and they'll call me, and I'll help them, but I'll never reciprocate.
Yeah.
It's about reciprocity. They're like, he'll never truly open up. He's the guy who will write a book about his parents going to jail, and that's how I find out that he was almost broke and homeless for the 10 years that I knew him. Jesus. Exact quotes from my friend.
I love what you're saying right now for a lot of reasons. I really appreciate it, but you definitely need. I got this great friend who every Wednesday we go in the woods with our dogs, and we share pretty much everything. I do, and then he does, or he does, and then I do. But he's got a great sense of humor, like you do. And so, like, we make fun of our anxieties. We just die laughing at them. All the worries, all the fears.
That's good, man.
That's what you need. You need a guy.
And I think you need that. I think
you need the right guy in the woods to make fun of each other, yourselves, and all the things you're thinking. Share it, get it out in like an hour. Come out of the woods, you're like rejuvenated. You feel seen and heard, and feel real good.
Well, I think you're far more advanced. I know we're taking up too much of your time, but because the fact that you have the gamut to both feel and to emote, to let it out, is healthier. Because I was telling my therapist this, and she says she was just laughing because she was like, "I agree with you. You should see all my clients." And she says, "My clients are mostly women fed up with their husbands who would rather get divorced than go to therapy." And she says, women are allowed in society a more range of emotions, right?
Yeah.
But there's a double standard for women listening. I understand, if you're angry or if you're bossy, you get penalized. I get it. But she says women are allowed to cry. Like if you see a woman crying in the grocery store, no one's going to be like, silly loser. She'll probably be like, oh, she's probably going through a lot. The only emotion that she said men are allowed is anger.
Yeah.
And that can be healthy.
Yeah, no, she's exactly right. And it's very true. And everybody heard you just say that about women being frustrated with rather get divorced than go to therapy. Like I know someone in my life just told me that. It's crazy. Because,
I have a friend too, man. He's about to throw it all away. I'm like, I think you're depressed. I think this is hereditary. I think if you just literally get diagnosed and get medicine, you'll be fine. He's like, nope, never.
Yeah, it's often one person keeps growing and looking. And it's often, I think, the woman, unfortunately. But you got to keep up. You got to keep up to keep that healthy too. That's for sure. All right, I'll let you go. I had all the time. You're the one who's got other things, and I appreciate you very much. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm going to be on you this year because I'm thinking about this issue a lot. I'm really thinking about this issue a lot. I hear from so many men because I think I've shared a lot through the past few years, especially of my the adversity that I figured out, because I got that practice going pretty much daily that you talked about, like putting your mask on first. Like I got that going pretty well.
Yeah. And so, when I mentioned in the summer, I finally started going to a therapist for OCD. I didn't expect this huge response from people, especially men and women who were like, thank you. Yeah. I'm like, well, I'm not looking for any thanks. They're like, you just mentioned it. The fact that you destigmatized it. Yeah. Men, when I wrote that piece on OCD, when I wrote the book about, incarceration being poor, there's so many people who come out and say, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed. But you saying it gives me more courage. And the fact that you weren't mocked and ridiculed, maybe I can go out and get help, right? So you see how many people suffer for no reason, and how, as we've talked about on your show, that suffering is not just personal, especially if you're a father or a husband. That suffering contaminates and poisons relationships.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I think I learned that through stand-up and through live radio when I would talk about, when I'd be vulnerable, when I'd admit, shortcomings or failures or struggles that I was having, I would immediately get back from listeners and from audiences that. And I was like, I like that, as long as it's not too much of a, look at me, I'm sad. But as long as I can continue to grow, which I think I've shown I can, and overcome a lot of the stuff that I didn't originally have resilience or understanding of how to deal with. And I've done it, semi-publicly. Like the feedback encourages you to keep being that way. And then I think you end up becoming a stronger, more attractive, more confident person in general too, I think.
Yeah. And if you're single and you're a man, women like that. Like, you get more, it's one of those things. You get the quality wife or partner. Yeah. You get good friends. The friends that are toxic, they just drift off.
Yeah, I think women in their 30s, let's be super sexist. I think women in their 30s and 40s, or who have been married for 15 or 20 years, like that. But I don't think they liked it when I was 20, when I was that way. They're like, why are you crying? You're so sensitive.
Yeah, but like, exactly. Women who've been through it and men who've been through it, they're like, oh, a man who's not, man who's in touch with his emotion and is reflective and is willing to change instead of just being enraged and an alcoholic. Yes, I think I'm going to go with that guy.
Yeah, but what if that? But to be fair, I know a lot of enraged, angry alcoholics, but they are fucking precision craftsmen. The way they could, replace a window or a door. The trade-offs,
Yeah, but the trade-offs again. If we're talking from our life experience when it comes to knowing people who've been through this, like, yeah, I'd rather take the guy who doesn't replace the window and is in touch with his feelings and can talk to me and can be warm and loving to my kid. I'll take that.
Would you rather have a guy who provides your family with great financial security and a gold healthcare plan, or one who snuggles and and tells you his feelings? And I don't know.
Ideally, both.
Ideally, both.
But I will say this, though, we joke about it, but knowing so many people who have achieved the American dream, who live in the gilded suburbs, who have everything. I know folks who have had monetary wealth, but have not had a loving relationship. And when you talk to them, it said, if you could trade it off, if you had a choice, ideally you want both. They're like, I want to be loved and I want to be seen.
Yeah.
I would rather be poor.
Yeah. Absolutely true. I think that's in the end, the truth. And that's where I will end it, because that's a beautiful point and an important one that we get pretty wrapped up around ego and money and everything, especially here in the West, if you will. Wajahat Ali, a pleasure to end the year with you. Thank you very much. And I look forward to a very exciting, enlightening, and wonderful new year for you.
Happy New Year to you and your listeners. And, we have a tough year ahead, but do the best that you can to find hope and joy in the small things and in the people and relationships that you have cultivated. And inshallah, even though this year was bad for some, we're still alive. And each day brings with it some opportunities and blessings. So let's hope, inshallah, that for those, if this year was very painful, hopefully the page turns and brings with it a new story.
More joy than suffering. There will always be suffering, but hopefully you will find the joy. Well said, my friend. Very well said. Thank you.
All right, buddy. I got to go to my kid.
All right. There he goes, everybody. Bye, Waj.
Bye-bye.
Oh, man. How about it? Wajahat Ali. Just love it. Man, You know, he is the only guy when he comes in, I'm recording, right when he comes in. No preamble and no goodbye either. When we're done, we're done. Everything that we say to each other, you pretty much heard. And give it a light edit. Make sure it's all clear. We're not talking over each other, etc. And there you have it. That was great. Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved that conversation. And I hope you did too. It was a great way to end the year and start the new year. And I'm very excited to talk more about that with more of you and opening it up a little bit more and having more personal reflections and thoughts about how we can grow and find more joy and less suffering as we journey on together, trying to maintain some sense of reality in this world that seems to be increasingly confusing as to what really is and is not happening. But we'll stay together and grow in the new year. Hope to see you in Vegas and March 22nd and 23rd. We'll have details of that in the next couple of weeks, but get your tickets now and book your hotels. I will see you in Vegas. All right, folks, that's it. That's all I've got. Jon Carroll, thank you very much. Thank all of you who support this podcast with a paid subscription or a written review. Keep it all coming. Very excited for 2024. Happy New Year, everybody.
Let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't in sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. Alright, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it than now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.